Welcome along to this latest edition of Behind the Tapes, produced by TigersPLUS for TigersPLUS members and beyond during these speedway-less times. Hope you managed to catch and enjoy our previous editions of Behind the Tapes featuring Anders Thomsen, Ricky Wells, 𝗀𝗲𝗵𝗏𝗍 and 𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏, still available to watch again via the TigersPLUS Facebook page. Well, it's been a big news week here in Glasgow. All Glasgow fans still swirling a little bit from, I guess, accepting and hearing the news that we will not be able to go back to gather at Ashfield Stadium until 2021. The realisation of that beginning to slowly penetrate everyone's minds. The correct decision, certainly in my view. However, against the backdrop of that big blow to us all this season, I think a bit of a tonic is required tonight. And I hope I've got just the answer for you. Tonight's guest can legitimately, I think, be described as one of the standout riders ever to have raced for Glasgow Speedway. 6 seasons a Tiger, consecutive seasons at that, 5 seasons of which he topped the team's averages. The man who thrilled us week on week with his chasing down and passing of opposition riders and his celebratory donuts. The man we fondly refer to as the Messiah. Time now to cross over to his Adelaide home and speak to the man himself, the Messiah, Shane Parker.
Yeah, hope you're all well and enjoying the lovely conditions we're got to put up with at the moment.
That was a bit of a build-up, Shane. The Messiah. I mean, it doesn't get much more praiseworthy than that, does it?
Yeah, I think you're bigging me up a little bit too much there, mate. I mean, I used to enjoy me racing and was never really a particularly good gator, so I had to make passes and I tried my hardest to do that and made a few along the way. So it was it was a good journey.
Well, it's a very good memory, Shane, and I can't believe it's such a long time ago now. We're going to talk about some of that stuff and pick up some of your memories and recollections of your time in the UK and with Glasgow in particular. It was May, spookily 3 years ago, May 2017, when we last heard from you, and that was yourself and Robert Chazak kindly sat down and spoke to us for a tiger bite. And I'm going to...
Few drinks.
I remember it very, very well. You had me and Brian Copeland very worried during that interview, Shane. We'll for anyone who hadn't seen that or hasn't seen it in a while, we'll add a link to that so you can enjoy it again. At that time, Shane, I remember you suggesting to me that you had lost touch a little bit with the UK speedway scene. Is that still the case?
Yeah, very much so. A couple of the young English kids came out to Australia in the last summer and I kind of hadn't heard a lot of them. I should have. They'd been out the previous season, but it was 𝗕𝗵𝗵𝗶𝗶 and 𝗀𝗶𝗵𝗏𝗏𝗏 and Tom Brennan, I think, were the 3 riders. But yeah, I've definitely lost touch. It's all the names now. Most of them are unfamiliar to me. I look at somebody like Scotty Nichols or Simon Stead's finished, Ollie Allen, and think they were the young ones, but they're not the young ones anymore, mate. So it's hit the old big 5-0 a couple of months ago. So yeah, no, I'm getting on now, and I've definitely lost contact with the British Speedway.
It happens to us all, Shane. We'll test your memory banks on British Speedway shortly. It'll be remiss of me, Shane, not to ask you right here and right now, how are you and the family coping with all of the demands and rigours of COVID?
Not too bad. We've been pretty lucky here in South Australia. We've had borders closed and airports are sort of, country's been locked down. But I think Australia as a whole, we've only had just over 100 deaths. So we got on top of the job pretty quick, I think, which was a good thing. It's not really good, especially the situation in the UK at the moment. And, you know, fingers crossed that'll get better shortly. Definitely. Hopefully it don't go on too long, but no, we're all fine here. I'm obviously an at-risk patient now, so I definitely can't catch it. And my father-in-law's an at-risk patient also, so there's 2 in the family, and we've had to be careful. But like I say, we've been pretty lucky. Not a lot of cases, and they're just starting to open up the borders now, and long weekend this weekend coming up, and I'm sure South Australia is going to be chock over there. Everybody going out camping and getting out for the weekend.
Some interesting and unprecedented, truly, times, Shane, that we're all having to deal with. Shane, you touched on there, and it was absolutely going to be my next question. You frightened a lot of people half to death around a year ago. We read on social media your health scare, and all I wanted to ask was, things feeling much better for you?
Yeah, I'm breathing. I'm still here, so that's definitely a bonus. Last 12 months have sort of been a bit of a blessing. I've sort of thought about things a bit differently, but yeah, no, I had a cardiac arrest. I was dead for 18 minutes, I think. So, well, that's not dead. I had 18 minutes downtime is what they classed it as. So, pretty lucky. CPR from my daughter, and then the ambos rocked up, and I think it was about 4 or 5 jolts from the old defib paddles, and managed to come back around. I don't really remember a lot of what happened. It's all a bit of a blur. A couple of little things I remember, but sort of the first recollection of coming back round, I sort of woke up in ICU and all tapped up to the machine and everything, and the nurse asked me if there's anything I want, and I asked her for a JD and cake, so I was back.
Do you know, even just listening to you talking about it, Shane, it's hugely sobering to hear you talk about it, never mind having experienced it. So, you know, I think our hearts literally went out to you and your family last year. And it's good to see you looking so well and hiding out in your man cave, it looks like.
Yeah, this is the man cave, mate. Me shed. I got me all my tools and machines and bikes and computers and stuff out here. So yeah, no, it's where I probably spent the majority of the last 12 months, I think.
And you were telling me just before we rolled the camera, Shane, you were telling me that you're at risk, as you've mentioned, and that's an impact in terms of your ability to work. And you've picked up some new hobbies, some new interests.
Yeah, I'm still off work. It's almost 12 months now. So, you know, I've been in isolation for about 12 months officially, as far as I'm concerned. But yeah, no, it's good. I've sort of took me hand to a couple of other different things and gotten involved. I've been doing a bit of gardening and growing a few veggies, which is passed the time away when I couldn't do a great deal. Still sort of health-wise, I can't do a great deal. I've sort of get pretty dizzy quite easy if I get up too quick, so I've got to take things a bit easy. But yeah, I've built me new computer recently, so I could edit 4K videos and stuff like that. So dabbling my hands in an editing program and having a bit of fun with some old videos and footage from over the years back when I was in the UK, and also current footage. I got a drone for Christmas from my daughter, so been using that and keeping me occupied.
It sounds like you're keeping yourself very occupied, Shane. That's excellent. Good to hear. Good to hear that you're not sitting with the TV remote all day long. Shane, naturally, this interview gives us a chance to catch up with you, and hopefully for you to catch up with us a little bit. And I mentioned at the top of the interview I wanted to talk about some of your memories and recollections of being over here racing. And one thing I did want to ask you about was your awareness of the positive revolution, which is exactly what it is, around Glasgow Speedway. You must have seen some of the footage and some of the pictures.
Yeah, it's been good to watch. I think Glasgow kind of set the tone with social media and the footage and videos and the promoting that they've been doing. It's refreshing and great to see. It's sort of up the level of professionalism a little bit regarding that. So there was that clip that came out not too long ago. I watched that and enjoyed that. It was a good watch and edited really good. And yeah, it's a shame that all didn't sort of kick off in 2004. You know, that would have been a good 6 years, mate. But no, it's a shame, but it's not a shame. So it's great to see the improvements that have been done, and yeah, it's great. It's good for all the fans and supporters. They've got something to be proud of and a team to support. And yeah, I'm sure everybody there at the moment's on a bit of a high. Well, until this coronavirus thing. So very disappointing what has had to happen. with Glasgow management. But I think they've taken a very sensible approach about what they're going to do. And, you know, I'm sure there's light at the end of the tunnel, and there's always next season. Bigger and better, I guess that's sort of what you'd be looking at for next year. And I'm sure that it'll definitely be kicked off with a big boom.
Yeah, I think that's the logic, Shane. You know, I think there's a realisation that sometimes there are bigger things in life than speedway and other sports. As much as it pains me to say that sort of thing out loud, but you know, we're talking about people's lives and risking health, etc., and that's got to be number one, hasn't it? I just wondered, Shane, how might Shane Parker have coped with being over here in the UK, ready to race, but not being able to?
Probably would have gone out and done a bit of gardening and bought a new computer. And no, I honestly don't know, mate. I would have been. I mean, I've got mates over there at the moment, and they're twiddling their thumbs. I watched an interview a day or two ago with Speedway Talk with Shane Childs, and the two Holder brothers were on there. And you know, Chris has got no money. He's sitting there twiddling his thumbs, not sort of doing anything. So it's apart from sort of trying to keep fit, there's not a lot you can do. It's unprecedented times, like you say. It's I notice in America at the moment, the AMA Supercross has just started racing. They're doing one venue in Salt Lake City in Utah, and they're running 2 meetings a week. So they're running on Wednesday and Sunday. So a lot of restrictions there. They're all wearing face masks, and they're all keeping their distance, and the mechanics can't get too close. So they've adapted to the conditions. Hopefully next season everybody will be on top of that problem, and it'll be a case of the season starting and not have to worry too much about the virus. But things are going to have to get back to normal soon. It's economy-wise, you know, it's a lot of people are suffering financially too. So it's worrying times, but I'm sure there's light at the end of the tunnel. Things are getting better here, and you know, hopefully not before too long they will in the UK. It's a shame old Boris didn't jump on it a bit earlier.
No, absolutely, Shane. You know, when you look around the planet, you know, different countries are in different phases, I guess, of recovery from this thing, and you know, we've got to all think positively that we will achieve that, and fingers crossed next year we can have a normal speedway season to look forward to. Shane, before we move on with any more of my questions, I'm going to fire some questions at you that have come from our TigersPLUS members. Okay, so we've got 5 questions, I think, to ask you. The first one comes from Karen Nicholson, and Carol asks, what was your most memorable moment as a Tiger, Shane?
Most memorable moment? Probably winning the Premier Pairs with George. I think it was only maybe 16 days after breaking my collarbone at Newport. So that was a bit of a job to come back from that. I probably didn't ride too good on the day, but I'd done enough on the day that as a pairing, we got to the final and won the meeting. So yeah, that was probably my most memorable time, I think.
I remember that one. I also remember you breaking that collarbone at Newport on a dry and dusty Sunday afternoon, if I remember correctly, or a Friday night. Next question.
Yeah, it's the same night. I think Stuart Robson got injured on the same night.
Yes.
I remember sitting in the pits with the laughing gas in a good place, and Stuart crashed, and the doctor had to leave me and ran out to Stuart because he knocked himself out. And yeah, I had quite a good night that night in the pits, but the next day weren't too good.
Next question comes from Ian Adam, a man who's got many photographs of you, Shane, probably on his bedroom wall. And Ian's question is, what's your thoughts, Shane, given your previous hard work over the years, that the Speedway Riders Association is not now in operation over here?
It's sad. A lot of hard work went into it. I spent probably 7 or 8 years, I think, on the SRA, building it up. We had awards nights, and riders had discounts for products through certain companies that were partners with the SRA, and it's a shame. I did hear rumours that the World Riders Association and a couple of Simon Stead and Ollie Allen were going to try and get the association up and running again. But it's so important for the riders to have a voice in the sport. A lot of times the riders don't have a say, and we're sort of dictated to and walked over. And you need a voice in the sport. Sometimes we have some really, it's definitely worth having a voice in the sport, and we should have a voice in the sport.
And I would imagine, Shane, given the extra considerations this year of all years, that lack of a voice, is a shame for riders.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, it was very important when clubs were folding and riders were owed money. The riders were the last persons that were getting paid. So it helped to have a voice. And, with these times that are coming up at the moment too, these COVID times, it would be great to be able to touch base as an association with the BSPA, inform riders of, what's going on and what situation is with the government, and if they're getting anywhere, if there's, what the future holds or how far away it's going to be. Yeah, it would be good, but not in that situation, unfortunately.
Here's a light-hearted question from one of your former sponsors here at Glasgow, Alan Watt. And Alan asks, who was the dirtiest rider you ever faced during your racing career?
Well, there's always a few of them in there. I think every rider's got a black book with riders' names in. So I've got to be a bit diplomatic. I don't know who's going to watch this. But, regarding lack of respect for riders, it's got to be Nicki P. Ryan Fisher was always very ruthless. But you got riders that were ruthless, riders that were hard. You knew the ones you could race fairly with and the ones that you had to be careful with. So, but if they dished it out, you had to dish it back. That's just part of racing. So,
it's a tough old game, isn't it, Shane?
Yeah, it is. You're racing for money. It's their livelihood at the end of the day. You got to pay the mortgage and feed the kids. So it becomes pretty important. When it gets to Grand Prix level, it's even more so. You're talking about lots of dollars at the end of the day. So there's a lot riding on it, but there's a line between going out and being dangerous and putting other riders in danger, and having respect for your fellow competitors.
Definitely. Here's another light-hearted question from Colin Hamilton, and Colin asks, did you ever see Alan Dick's wallet in those 6 seasons at Glasgow?
No, but he had a big back pocket.
So come back.
No, that were fun 6 years. I mean, working with Alan and Stuart, I thoroughly enjoyed them 6 years. They were probably the best 6 years I had racing in 22 seasons.
That's really nice to hear you say that, Shane. And final question comes from an old sparring partner of yours who got in touch with me last night. James Greaves wants to ask you a question. His question to you, Shane, is: did you enjoy our 5-1 partnerships in 2009 as much as I did?
Oh, without a doubt. Greasy was a great team rider. I definitely liked team riding with him. I think the only other rider that compared to riding with James was Chris Louis when I was at Ipswich. We banged a few 5-1s out, but I'd like to know stat-wise how many 5-1s me and James done that year. But no, it was a pleasure riding with him, and I think sometimes I got in his way and probably vice versa. But I do remember one meeting at Glasgow. I'm pretty sure Jimmy weren't riding for Glasgow, and I locked up in front of him, and he clipped me back wheel, and I done the big high side, and we both ended up in the fence, both knocked out, and he got excluded for it, and it wasn't even his fault. It was me. So sorry, James.
I was going to mention that incident. I think James might have been racing for Newcastle at the time, and I remember you both been upside down, attached to the fencing on the 4th turn. Yeah,
I've got a picture of that, and you can't see it too well, but I've still got a few scars from that crash.
Well, listen, here's an exclusive. James has confirmed that he will do one of these interviews with me in a few weeks' time, so we'll ask him about that, Shane.
Yeah, no worries, mate. I'll keep my eye open and watch it when it's up online.
Here's a quiz question from me, Shane, and I asked you this question when we last spoke 3 years ago, and you got it 100% correct. So I'm going to re-ask it. and see if you can get full marks once again. And it was just to remember, Shane, in your 22 years, I think you said, racing career here in the UK, can you rhyme off in approximate sequence all of those clubs that you raced for and the number of seasons?
Oh, I can name the clubs. My memory's gotten worse. Yeah.
Do the clubs then. Go for the clubs.
Years was Ipswich. First 5 years over Ipswich, 1990 to 94. Went to Middlesbrough, 95, 96. 97 and 98, Kings Lynn. 99 was Hull. 2000, I started at Kings Lynn. Only time I was ever sacked in 22 years by Waggy. Ended up going to Bellevue for the rest of the half of the season. 2001 was Peterborough. 2002, Peterborough. Maybe 2003, Peterborough. Not sure about that. It's coming back to me. But anyway, after that, 2004 was Glasgow to 2009. 2010 was Somerset. And my final year was 2012 at Sheffield. So I could have actually had a look, because I've got my mug here and it's got every single club on it that I rode for in the years I rode there.
You shouldn't have told us that, Shane. That was mightily impressive, Shane. Very well done. I didn't have the answers written down, so. And listen,
pretty close. I might have one wrong with the Peterborough. I'm not too sure. I don't know if I've done 2 or 3 years at Peterborough.
We'll allow you that one. And listen, over that period, Shane, you rode against and with some real top liners of the sport.
Yeah, I mean, my first year over, I was in the National League, which was the second division, and then Ipswich decided to step up to the first division in '91. So I stepped up with them, and so I had one season in the second division, and then for the next 14 years, I think I was in the top flight of British Speedway, and you had riders like Per Jonsson and Greg Hancock, Billy Hamill. I mean, Greg's only just finished. Amazing career he had. But, you know, there was a lot of good riders back in them days, Henry Gustafsson and a lot of the old boys that I should remember their names, but it's difficult. But it was difficult times back then to ride. It was hard. It was sort of, you had to sink or swim. I guess it's the same now. I think it's probably gotten a bit more professional now, but, you know, at British League level, I think it was probably harder back then than it is now.
And Shane, I'm duty bound, you know, on reflecting on your career over in the UK, I'm duty bound to focus a little bit on the Glasgow years. And you've already mentioned 5 minutes ago that you enjoyed that period of racing over here. I was going to ask you the question, you know, when you reflect back on those 6 seasons at Glasgow, what was it about riding for Glasgow that you enjoyed most, and what did that contribute to your, I guess, to your career, you know, as a whole, that period?
Yeah, but it was a long drive up there, obviously. So I was lucky that I had accommodation while I was up there, and you know, I don't know what it was. I was almost like I felt at home. I remember going out with Ange, and you'd always see action in Glasgow. No matter where you went or what you'd done, something happened when you were out. So I always said to her, I said, I feel like I'm at home. I feel like I'm in Port Adelaide. And she kind of always seemed to feel a bit intimidated there. So it was quite ironic, because at the end of my career, my last year in the UK, guy from Adelaide contacted Sheffield Speedway, and it turned out it was my biological father. Long story short, few of you have heard the story before, but I got to meet my biological father, and he was born a couple of miles down the road from the track at Ashfield. So
isn't that absolutely
I don't
incredible?
know whether that had something to do. Sorry?
Isn't that an absolutely incredible tale, that, Shane? And that connection,
yeah.
Who knows, maybe that was the connection that you sensed that whole period.
100%. I mean, that's kind of where I'm thinking. I don't know if it was or wasn't, but no, it's definitely a place I love, Glasgow, and fond memories and fond times. And I banged in a lot of maximums in the 6 years I was at Glasgow, so I got to know the track pretty well there, and used to turn up early and help Danny prepare the track and do the track, and we had the study centre going, and I don't know, I just love me Speedway and love being involved, and if we can sort of get the community and more people to the Speedway, and that's just what it was all about for me, putting on a show, entertaining people.
You Shane, you always made yourself very available, highly available to the club for promotional activities. You and I worked on a number of those together, and alongside a number of, a large number of other people. You worked with the kids. You were great with the kids, great with the sponsors, and I do think in this day and age, where perhaps the sport's become a little bit more professional, that might be something that's lacking in the majority of current day riders.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I think Speedway's always been accessible to the riders from a fan or supporter's point of view. A lot of sports aren't. MotoGPs and motocross, supercross, road racing. It's car racing. It's very difficult to get close to the drivers or riders. So, Speedway's always been good in that respect. You've got to give the fans time, because if it weren't for them, you wouldn't be making a living out of the sport. So it's, that's all part and parcel of being a professional in riding, I think. And it's probably something a lot of kids should be taught, as they're growing up and going through the ropes, sort of, that they've got to give back a little bit.
The Glasgow track, Shane, it's been remodelled, broadened, reshaped a number of times since you last used to grace it on a weekly basis. But what was it about that original track shape that lent itself to giving you some advantage? You used to pick people off on your favourite bends and favourite lines.
Yeah, I mean, the thing with the Glasgow, there was always more than one line. If you had a track that was just one line and you had to be on that line and couldn't get off it, it's very, very difficult to make passes. I mean, Plymouth's one, Rye House is another one. There's a few tracks where it's all over if you don't make the start. Whereas Glasgow, you had options. You could come in tight, you could come in deep, you could run up to the fence, you could cut back. It was just a races track, I think, at the end of the day. Kings Lynn's another one. Birmingham's probably another one. You have options, and that's what makes a good racetrack from my point of view. It's not who makes a start and gets out in front and wins the race. It's about the fastest rider that can get around the track in 4 laps, whether he makes a start, whether he don't make the start. It's good to be able to line people up and get by them if you have the opportunity to do that, I guess, mate.
Let's have a quick look now, Shane, at you in action around that former Ashfield circuit, here up against Gary Havelock.
Look out, Happy.
There we are, an old heat that I managed to dig out of YouTube. You in action there, passing Mr. Havelock around.
I think I've seen that one, yeah.
Shane, one other thing I wanted to ask you about was back in 2006, so you were in your pomp at Glasgow, and that coincided with the club's 60th anniversary season. And at that point, the club ran a supporters poll to vote for their all-time favourite Glasgow riders. And the top 3, you featured in that top 3 at number 2 all-time Glasgow rider. Can you remember who were positioned 1 and 3?
Stevie Lawson number 1, weren't he?
That's correct, he was.
And Jimmy was number 3. Jimmy
McMillan.
Should know his last. McMillan, that's it. I should know him because he's always at Coventry as a machine examiner, and Coventry is my local track. So I used to see Jimmy all the time. Yeah, it'd be great to see all the old faces again. One day we'll get back.
Absolutely. And you know, I mentioned that accolade by the Glasgow fans, and you know, I think fans of most clubs, and Glasgow in particular, are very appreciative of loyalty, Shane. Loyalty and performance. And I did a little bit of research, and thanks to Derek Watson for helping me with this. And we had a look at since 1970. So we only went back to 1970, which is 50 years ago. That's a big chunk of time. And in those 50 seasons, that we looked at which riders topped the averages year on year for the club. So some riders spent a good number of seasons as a Glasgow rider, but only topped the averages once or twice, and then some very good riders. So in the twice category, we've got riders like Kenny McKenna, George Stansell, Shane Bowes, James Greaves, Craig Cook's in there. Craig Cook obviously has got a few more seasons to try and better that.
I think so. Yep.
Those riders who managed to top the averages 3 seasons as a Glasgow rider, there's only 2 of them: Brian Collins and your old mucker Joe Screen. And then there's a bit of a jump to riders who managed it 5 times, and there's only 2 of those: Jim McMillan and Shane Parker. And then Steve Lawson's out on his own with 10, of course. But I think Shane, when I seen those stats, and of course your entertainment factor that you brought to Glasgow, I can see why the Glasgow fans relished you and rated you so highly.
Yeah, well, my thoughts on that matter was the only reason I was runner-up was the fact that I was a current rider. I think I was in everybody's minds and got a lot of votes because of that. You know, you do it in another 10 or 15 years' time, I don't think too many people at Glasgow will remember me, mate.
Well, you say that very modestly, Shane, but I'm not so sure, because the statistics and the memories speak for themselves, I think. One other accolade which you did pick up at Glasgow was being inducted to the club's Hall of Fame, and there's not too many riders throughout the club's entire history who have that, Shane.
No, I'm very proud of that. It's probably the only Hall of Fame I'm inducted into. I'm a life member of a couple of clubs back here in Australia, but no, I'm very honoured to be in the Hall of Fame, and I'll definitely want to get a picture next to that frame at the Speedway when I come over, mate.
Well, we'll talk about that before we let you go, Shane. A few more questions, if I might. In fact, let's have a look at you. Let's have a look at you in action now. And this was the season after you left us at Glasgow, and you moved on to become a Somerset rider. And here's a heat now. I know Shane Parker racing in blue and yellow. I still can't believe it.
Worst move in my career going to Somerset. Although in saying that, I had one of the best sponsors ever in Mark Saunders Sharp Retail. But yeah, that's a whole nother story.
Well, let's enjoy a couple of old boys in action. Here you are up against Joe Screen.
So far, although he was complaining about a lack of speed with his bike, he's been superb. You know, he's unbeaten. But it's an opportunity now for Shane Parker on the inside to do a great job. You know, he was impressive last time out, just failing to win the race. But great showdown between those 2 experienced campaigners on the inside.
And then Kyle Howarth off gate 3 in blue. Michael Rajkowski for Glasgow off the outside. Keep your eyes on the inside 2 gates. The man in red, Shane Parker. The man in white, Joe Screen. They've ridden against each other many times down the years. Which way will it go? What a start from Screen! Absolutely stunning. And also for Shane Parker. And now Shane Parker's in trouble. Glasgow in a great position here. But Parker's charging hard up the inside. And brilliant stuff from Parker. All 3 riders. Glasgow on a 5-1. But Parker is going to come back for more.
Superb stuff there, Joe Screen keeping Shane Parker at bay. And you've got to say, Rajkowski's ridden a brilliant race to roar around the outside. Superb stuff from him. Glasgow really putting it to it. Now Parker on the inside. He's been plugging away there. Can he get his nose in front and pass Screen? Screen said he didn't feel fast enough, and so it's proving. moving here, because Shane Parker has ridden brilliantly to get into second place.
Well, Parker was in trouble at one stage, but he's bounced back. 𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏 has the lead. Who would have thought that? Parker is second, Screen is third. It's a 4-2 to Glasgow as it stands, but Parker's coming back for more up the inside. Surely he's got the speed.
What a ride from Shane Parker! From nowhere, dead and buried for 2.5 laps. Rode absolutely spectacularly round the inside to pass initially 𝘀𝗫𝗏, and then on the last corner up the inside to pass 𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏 on the run to the line. A saviour for the home team there. A 5-1 there could have been absolutely critical in the outcome of this meeting. Shane Parker steals the limelight away from the...
Yeah, I'm sorry, mate. It's all about the bickies, though. I had to pay the mortgage.
Shane, a couple of questions just to run down the interview and let you get off into your evening. What do you miss most about life and or Speedway in the UK?
There's a few things. I mean, I miss the competitiveness and, you know, getting the adrenaline going. And I haven't been out on the bike for a while, but I get out on the bike when I can to keep the adrenaline going. But it's definitely not the same as race, and it's pretty stressful, to be fair. So it's getting my age is probably not something you want to be doing. I don't know how Greg Hancock done it for so long. It's take me hat off to him, but yeah, no, it's forget where I was even going now, mate. Sorry.
Well, that's okay. What about non-Speedway things? I don't know, food, drink, countryside. What do you miss? Rain,
I missed a lot of my German food, mate. German food was good. What do I miss?
Weather?
I miss me kebabs. I used to like me kebabs, but I don't miss the weather at all. In saying that, have a look at me, would you? I'm rugged up. I've got a jacket, I've got a jumper, I've got another top on, and a t-shirt. I think it got down, it was pretty cold here last night. I think it got down to about 0.5 degrees.
To be
almost zero.
Almost zero in Adelaide, wow. To be fair, Shane, you've got far less facial hair these days to keep you warm. The goatee's gone.
Yeah. I've got far less head hair as well, mate. Have a look at that. It's all gone.
Oh, it's still there.
Scary.
Just need to brush it.
That's from wearing a helmet.
Yeah, that's it.
Wearing a helmet for so many years, mate. That's my excuse.
And Shane, you know, just to round off the Glasgow connection, the last time you ever pulled on that red and white race jacket was the 23rd of October 2011, late season opportunity to guest for the Tigers against Edinburgh Monarchs. Do you remember it? A 4-ride maximum.
I sure do. Very, very, very muddy, weren't it?
It was. It wasn't very pleasant, but a 4-ride maximum, and you refused to come out in Heat 15.
Yeah, well, I wanted to finish on a high, I guess, and I think Glasgow almost pretty much won the meeting. I think that's probably the only time in 22 years I knocked back a ride.
Understandable under
I wanted to go out as my last ride as a professional with a winning race, and I was fortunate enough to do that.
Parker in blue, James Greaves. For the Monarchs in white, Kevin Walbert. In yellow, Craig Cook.
Well, the Monarchs still in command of overall. They have that slender 1-point advantage going into the last 3 heats. But this is the big one. Heat 13. And it looks as if there were a bit of movement there, but referee Stuart Wilson seems to have let it go. Kevin Walbert tries to go around the inside of 𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏 Shane Parker, and Shane Parker now moving away from James Greaves in what could be Shane Parker's final ever race on a speedway bike in a competitive match, in a senior competitive match. He has said he is hanging his Kevlars up at the end of the season, come hell or high water, and what a fitting way, if this was his last race in professional competitive speedway, that he would win it. And Shane Parker and James Greaves way in front of 𝗵𝗵𝗋𝗿𝗏. Craig Cook is just somewhere in the distance, but 𝗵𝗋𝗋𝗏 really trying to press home. This would give the Tigers a 3-point aggregate advantage going into the last two heats. But more importantly, Shane Parker comes round in what could be his last ever race, and he wins heat number 13.
Shane Parker winning heat number 13 in an incredible time of 62.7, considering the conditions. Amazing. Second in blue, also for the Tigers, the one, the only, James Greaves. Third in whites for the Monarchs, their number one impressive German, 𝗵𝗵𝗴𝗲𝗿. But it's a big 5-1 to the Tigers, making the score 48 to the Tigers, 33 to the Monarchs. The Tigers now go in front, ladies and gentlemen, on aggregate.
And Shane Parker, after his victory lap with James Greaves, in a pretty respectable time considering conditions. I think that says it all. He doesn't expect to be out in heat number 15, and this is his final farewell with a few of them in the last couple of years, but this is it. Shane Parker, and Shane Parker says goodbye to the Ashfield faithful after a Tiger here for 6 years, and he's greeted and cheered on by everyone here and his family. Wait to meet him, and that is the end of
same year, an old Glasgow rider, Jason Lyons, he started the same year as me and finished the same year as me. We both went over in 1990 and both finished our seasons in 2011, but unfortunately Jace finished with a snap femur in 3 places. So, you know, I was pretty lucky that I won my last race and didn't end up breaking anything.
2 real stars of the sport and 2 riders who entertain an awful lot of people over in Europe and around the UK, Shane. And then, of course, March 2012, farewell meeting at Sheffield. Some amazing names in your lineup that day to help you celebrate. And then you and the family jumped on that plane off to sunny Adelaide. 7 years ago, Shane.
Yeah, it was a very busy. Yeah, I can't believe it's scary how time's flown by. It was a very busy period. We were packing up the house also and had pickup trucks coming and house empty, and I think we were out of the house for a week before we left, and yeah, everything happened in that last week. It was pretty chaotic, and it's not something I'd ever want to do again. Fond memories, but not something I'd want to do again. I'd like to space everything out a little bit more if I could, but no, we had a great trip home. We left the UK and went to America for a few, probably 5 or 6 days, I think. Stayed with Dookie, Charlie Ermolenko, another old Glasgow rider. And then we ventured on to New Zealand for another 5 or 6 days and got one of the rounds of the Speedway Grand Prix in. So it was a nice trip back home, but it was also good to get back home and catch up with my dad, who had cancer at the time, and time I got to spend with him was pretty precious. So it was good.
Absolutely, Shane. A bit of a world tour finale. Shane, it's been an absolute pleasure to catch up with you. You know, 35, 40 minutes isn't long enough. I was going to ask, when the world settles back down to some sense of normality, are there any Parker household plans to come and do a UK tour?
We had plans. We had flights booked last year to come over. Some idiot decided to drop dead though, so it didn't happen. Yeah, the plan was we were coming back this year, but obviously for virus reasons, that's been put on hold. So next year might be a little bit too early now with this virus situation, and me being at risk. We'll have to see how things go and sort of what situation the UK's in, I guess. But hopefully I'll get there. I know my wife's desperate to get back, so next couple of years, hopefully we'll be there. And we'll be up there to see you all.
Well, Shane, I was going to say that I hardly need mention this final sentence, but you know, as does Ange and the family, that you will be made most welcome back in Glasgow, and we really would hugely look forward to shaking your hand once again and maybe buying you a J&D in the bar and showing you around the old place in its new guise.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it, and as long as that Davey mixes, we'll be right.
Shane Parker, thanks very much for taking time to talk to us. Go off and enjoy your weekend with the family. Stay safe, stay well, and we hope to see you in the not too distant future.
No worries, pleasure. See you later.